Hey y'all, my name is Adina Barnett Miller, but I'm known to my students as Mrs. B. I've been passionate about West Virginia history for as long as I can remember, but my mom would tell you it all started when I was 3 years old and she bought me a West Virginia counties puzzle at Gino's Pizza. I've taught history in Ripley, West Virginia for over 20 years now, and I'm an adjunct professor who teaches college West Virginia history to high school students. Please join me for West Virginia History with Mrs. B, a field trip across the Mountain State to walk in the footsteps of those who came before us. Hey y'all, it's West Virginia History with Mrs. B, and today we are in Wirt County. So excited to be in a place I've not been before. We are in Burning Springs in Wirt County, and this is the site of the first commercial oil well in the United States. Not Pennsylvania, but West Virginia. And so we're going to teach you some of that history today, and we're going to start with this historical sign that talks about the Rathbone Well. The first well in West Virginia was drilled solely for petroleum. It was located here at Burning Springs in Wirt County, and the well was drilled with a spring pole by the Rathbones and others from Parkersburg before the Civil War in 1859 and completed in May of 1860. It produced oil at the rate of 100 barrels per day. And so we're going to get into this Civil War history, such as when in 1863 General Jones, who was commanding Confederate forces, came through and set fire to the oil that was stored here. And we'll talk about why it was stored here. And so you'll see estimates as we go through here that between 150,000 and 300,000 barrels of oil were destroyed here in 1863. This is the first in the world. It is still producing to this day, and so this is a really great place to visit in Wirt County. And so we're going to teach you more of that history as we are here at Burning Springs Historical Park. This place is so historically significant that it has 2 West Virginia historical markers, and the second one is this one talking about the destruction of the oil works here at Burning Springs in Wirt County in 1863. And so on May 9th, 1863, a large force of Jones and Bowdoin raiders, who we've talked about previously when we've talked about Waitman T. Willie and as well as Francis Pierpont, they came through on their raid of destruction, in a large part because the Confederacy was mad that the state of West Virginia was getting ready to become the state of West Virginia. They are going to come into Burning Springs and they're going to destroy the oil industry by setting fire to all the wells in this area. So there were at least 80 wells in this area, and they damaged everything that was being used for the oil industry. And they're going to light between 150 and 300,000 barrels of oil on fire when they're here. It's going to be so devastating that they actually light the river on fire, which we will show you the river coming up and talk more about this history coming up. It's going to leave this town of over 10,000 people in ruins, and it's going to decimate the oil and gas industry for the rest of the Civil War. So we are now with a Civil War road sign here on the property, and it talks more about this burning of the Burning Springs oil field. So as we discussed, May 9th, 1863, Jones and Bowdoin are going to come through and they are going to light the oil fields on fire. And as it points out, the burning oil turned the Little Canal River into a sheet of flames for 8 miles. The light from the fire was visible in Parkersburg, which was 42 miles away. And let's just be honest, this scared the crap out of the people living in Parkersburg at the time. There were about 5,000 residents, and they thought, oh my gosh, look at that fire, they're coming for us. There was, not a lot of information being passed at that time, and so they were scared that whatever was happening was going to happen in Parkersburg. It says, one witness remarked that Jones' Confederates ate all the food, drank all the whiskey, and burned all the oil, and reported that all the oil, the tanks, the barrels, the engines for pumping, the engine houses, and the wagons, everything that was used or could get this oil out was lit on fire. So here you can see this is an image drawn of that fire. This is something that people don't talk about a lot today, but this was under Union control. This area of what will become West Virginia was under Union control. And so both sides are going to be skirmishing, like in 1861, 62, 63, both sides are going to be skirmishing and trying to take control of this, of the western part of Virginia, whether that's the railroads, the coal mines, the oil and gas, the salt down in Charleston area, down at Malden. So there's going to be, you know, this scramble to destroy anything that's of value for either side, because one side did not want the other side to have access. So it says men of experience estimated that the oil destroyed was 150,000 barrels. I've heard between 150 and 300. As you can see, there's some conflict between the two sides. It says Jones' raid caused delegates to West Virginia's first nominating convention in Parkersburg to flee briefly for fear that Jones would attack the city. So this is not going to be the only engagement here. It says, because this was the first oil field boomtown in the entire United States, they're going to be producing oil that's used for lubricating machinery, in particular railroad machinery, because this was very important. We're not really using the oil to power anything, but it's being used as a lubricant for machinery. It says the military importance of this site was, of course, obvious. This is the first major oil field in the United States. It says, after General McClellan occupied Parkersburg in May 1861, he sent troops here to drive off Confederate guerrilla groups. This engagement happened on June 19th. It was the first of several fights that took place here at Burning Springs. In 1862, Confederate guerrillas attacked Fort Hill. Colonel Rathbone, by the way, this is the Rathbone Well we're going to get ready to take you to. So this is Colonel Rathbone, who is protecting his property. He is going to be loyal to the Union, and you can see here he's in the West Virginia Infantry. His family owns this oil field. He was posted to a detachment to protect it, and he, you know, even though this is his family's land, he is even going to be driven off, and the fort will be burned. So this map's great. It'll give us an idea of where we are. So we are right outside of Elizabeth, which up here would be Elizabeth. Here is where we are. So if you keep on going on this road that we're on, you'll end up in Grantsville and then over to Glenville. But here's Cairo up in Ritchie County. This is Harrisville, which is also in Ritchie County, and West Union. So this is going to be the major oil field, like all the way up to Tyler County, Wetzel County, after the Civil War. And so what ends up happening is, after this is destroyed in 1863, because the nation is at war, nothing's going to be done here until after the Civil War ends. They're not going to have the manpower, they're not going to have the materials, they're not going to have the things that they need to rebuild. So this field is going to sit dormant after 1863 until after the Civil War ends. All right, so we have crossed the road from the historic markers, and we are now actually at the historic park. And this is on the banks of the Little Canal River. The Little Canal River starts in Upshur County and goes through Gilmer County and Calhoun County, and then flows its way to Wirt County, and then eventually dumps into the Ohio River at Parkersburg. The reason why so much oil had accumulated here is because this river was not dammed until after the Civil War, and so they had to wait for the river to get high enough so that they could load it onto barges to take it down the river to Parkersburg. And so that's why it accumulated for months and months and months on the banks here. And so you know, they're going to dam the river. Starting in 1867, they're going to put 4 different dams on the river so that they can get the oil and gas out. There will also be a railroad that is built in this direction as well. But at the time of the Civil War, the river was the only way out to get the oil out, and it was not dammed at that time. And so that's why there was so much here. This was a pretty common occurrence in what will become West Virginia. This is like even before the Great Canal River down In Charleston, it was dammed, and so they can only use even that river at certain times of the year because the water would get too low, and so boats could not go up and down. And so the boats that are going to come up and down the little canal were not big like the big steamboats that you've seen on like the Ohio River or the Canal River. These are going to be smaller vessels. But because there's so much oil and gas coming out of this region of West Virginia, that's why they're going to dam it and be able to get the oil and gas to come out of here. So this is going to be the first boom town, oil boom town in the United States, and it really will boom after the Civil War ends. So when I talk about boomtown, I mean, it really was a boomtown here. There were over 10,000 people living in Burning Springs in 1860. That is double the population of Wirt County today. There are going to be 5,000 residents today in all of Wirt County. And so in $1860, the land here was going for $4,000 an acre. And when the Rathbones, who built this very first oil well right here, which you can see, when they built this oil well in the 1850s, and it was what they called a gusher because it would produce 100 barrels a day, it became national news. It was national news. And so the Rathbones after the Civil War are going to sell out, and they are going to sell this piece of property for $400,000 in 1870s money. So big money, like lots of millions of dollars in today's money. And so this is going to be, like I said, the first center of the West Virginia oil boom. But once they realize that oil is here in Burning Springs, they realize it's all throughout the region. And so not only is Wirt County going to become dependent on the oil and gas industry, but all the surrounding counties, Tyler, Ritchie, Wood, Tyler, Wetzel, Marshall, Doddridge, Pleasant. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be oil and gas, oil and gas, oil and gas. And what's wild to think about is they would hit these pockets of gas trying to get to the oil, and they didn't have a way to capture the gas, nor did they really know what a use for the gas was, that they would like let that gas burn off for weeks or months before they could get to the oil. And so they were letting all this natural gas out. So the air was, of course, flammable. They didn't know how to capture it. Of course, later on, they'll figure out how to capture it and use it. And so this area, you know, is going to go through an oil boom, really, you know, not only before the Civil War, but especially after the Civil War. And then we're going to have a natural gas boom today. And you think about how much natural gas they released when they didn't know how to capture it. And this place is still, you know, profiting from natural gas in particular, even today here in 2024. So this is such a pretty, like, idyllic spot. But you can see how low the river is, the little canal, and why you couldn't get a boat here. All right, so we're now closer to the Rathbone Well here on the banks of the Little Canal River. And so you can see it has the sign that says Rathbone Well on it in two different places. So here's some historical information. It says it was drilled by J.C. Rathbone in March of 1860, completed in July, and was drilled with a steam engine and a derrick with pole tools that came from the salt works at Charleston. It was initially drilled to a depth of 140 feet, later deepened to 550 feet, and it produced 100 barrels of oil a day in the 1860s. And it continued to produce into the 1930s as part of a series of wells that were here, all pumped by one gas engine. And it said that some of these sites were sold off for campsites. This one was set aside by H.N. Grow to be preserved for posterity. And so his grandson donated this well and 5 acres of land to the Oil and Gas Museum, and that the well was cleaned out by Daryl Perkins, who donated his services. Other donors include Mid-Junkin, Miller Supply, etc., etc. And they found that it still produced several gallons of oil and shows natural gas. And though it's only producing small amounts of oil and gas, it's still pretty cool because it is 164 years old and it's still producing oil and gas today. So you can see here it needs some love and attention, but it's still producing. And Dave, that view of the Little Canal River, it's gorgeous.
We'll get over on the boardwalk here a little bit. But
yeah, this is a cool place to see. I've always wanted to come here. So I'm kind of a little freaked out right now about snakes. So I'm keeping my eyes out for.
And then here's a quote from the Marietta Republican newspaper about the Rathbone Well.
It says, Messrs. J.V. and J.C. Rathbone each commits boring for oil on their contiguous farms. We have hereto noted the yield of one of these wells, but for the information of our many new subscribers, we insert the fact reference to it. This well belonged to J.C. Rathbone, gave promise of a great yield while in the process of boring. Upon putting in the pump and getting fairly to work, it was found to yield 250 to 300 barrels of oil in 24 hours. This immense product, far surpassing that of any other well in existence, was soon noised abroad by means of notice in these columns, which was copied into other papers and attracted to the spot numbers from a distance. Leases were shortly in demand and has steadily and rapidly increased.
And then the instructions for the pumping system.
Yeah, but it's not in great shape, so I'm not going to understand all of that. I am definitely not an expert. So here are our dates. They find oil in a water well in Elizabeth, 1719. In 1819, first reports of commercial oil sales from California, which is up in Wood County. So they're going to sell up over $20,000. Then 1842, they're going to have oil in the water well here. And then 1851, they're going to build the California House Way Station on the Stanton-Parkersburg Turnpike, which of course parallels the B&O Railroad. So it's perfect because the railroad's just north of here. And it says, he turns down entreaties to go to California, saying, I have my black gold right here in West Virginia. 1857, the town of Petroleum was named Petroleum Station by the B&O. 1859, there's going to be the deed recorded for 125 acres of petroleum. And then 1859, Bushrod Krill sells his oil mill at California to kerosene lamp inventor and producer. 1859, they're going to drill for oil at California. 1860s, when the boom starts here, and they're going to finish the oil well here, and that many wells are going to be drilled all over Wood and Work counties by the end of 1860s. They'll even find oil in Ohio up near Marietta. The Volcano oil field's going to start, Horseneck oil field's going to start, and then really after the Civil War, this place starts to boom. If you would like to come and see Burning Springs for yourself, it is located on State Route 5. It's about 7 miles south of Elizabeth and about 22 miles north of Grantsville in Calhoun County. This is a beautiful spot on the Little Canal River, which you can appreciate from this view right here. And so I highly recommend making the trip, making the stop to come and see the oldest producing oil well in the world. Not just the United States, but in the world. And it's here in Work County, West Virginia. Thank you so much for joining us here on West Virginia History with Mrs. B. Thanks y'all for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to West Virginia History with Mrs. B on both Facebook and YouTube. So it says some sites were sold off as campsite. This one was saved by the Crow family for posterity.
Grow.
What? Grow? No, it's Crow. It's Grow. Huh.
That's a G.
All right, so grow. I thought it was crow, sorry.
Shall we start over?
Yeah. Jesus.
Mary, Joseph, and the 10 decent apostles. Let's not forget them.
I'm sorry, the chicken was crowing. That stupid croc, the rooster, whatever it was. I was like, it has
Where's
to be.
Colonel Sanders when you need him?
I know.
All right, let's try this again.
All right, let's try this again. All right. Are you laughing because I'm getting the crowing confused with grow? Lord help
All right,
us.
blooper reel. All right.
Jesus, take the wheel. Whew. It's hot.
Yes, it is. All
And
right.
that dead deer stinks. Bad.
Yeah, for the blooper reel, just to let everybody know, there's a dead deer over there.
And it's covered in flies.
It's
on
like
the back
92
end.
degrees today, and that dead deer stinks.
Like bad. I don't know how these people that live here can't.
I don't think they live there. I think that's like part of the
Oh no, I
setup
think they
here.
live there. I think they like live here.
All right, let's try this again.
All right, so we're now closer to the Rathbone Well here on the banks of the Little Canal River.